Hi, hello everyone. For today's tutorial lesson, our group 3 would like to talk about two main topics. The first one is about specific phobia, and the next one is about skin picking disorder. So, for the first specific phobia, the title is cynophobia. What is cynophobia? Cynophobia comes from the Greek words that mean dog, cyno, and fear phobia. Like specific phobias like cynophobia, it affects 7 to 9% of the population. And a specific phobia is an intense fear that interferes with daily life, and there are 5 possible subtypes. They can be from animal, situation, natural environment, blood injection injury, and other. So under DSM-5, cynophobia falls under the animal specific fear. And to receive a diagnosis of specific phobia, a child must meet six of 7 criteria. For example, intense and enduring fear, exposure leads to anxious response, exposure ended with considerable distress, must interfere significantly, present for 6 months or prior. Now let's go to our first article. So, both Sam and Cindy, they show several symptoms of having fear of dogs. They both become fear of the presence of the dog. They both will limit their time outside because they do not want to encounter any dogs. Like for example, Sam, he would no longer visit friends and family who own a dog. He reportedly be frozen and shot in the presence of dogs. And for Cindy, she would cry or scream if a dog approached her. So, these two young children were diagnosed by two assessments. The first one is anxiety disorders interview schedule, parent schedule. This 4P. So, this 4 is a semi-structured interview. And the purpose is to aid the clinician in determining the presence, severity, and significance of anxiety and other emotional concerns and/or behavioral difficulties in children and adolescents. And the next one is child behavior check with CBCL. And CBCL is to measure that examines a variety of emotional and behavioral problems for children ages 1.5 to 5 years of age. So for the treatment plan, we use two. The first one is PM. And PM involves the child observing another individual interacting successfully in a non-fearful way with the feared stimulus. So basically, PM is like modeling. It requires having the child then interact with the model and the stimulus. So the purpose is so that the child would become less fearful towards their phobia. And next we use RP. RP is a combination of 4 variables found to be successful in the treatment of phobia. The first one is a repeated graduated approach toward phobic stimuli in situation. Reinforcement of small gains in approaching phobic stimuli and situation. Feedback measuring performance and explicit instructions and expectation. So in RP, we use the hierarchy level of fears. We take from the smallest less fearful to the highest most fearful. Basically, we use operant conditioning. So treatment cost. Basically, RP graded in vivo exposure, and PM use models for each time because of the child. And the fear hierarchy, we use a reinforcement structure. The reinforcement structure such as when they manage to tackle their fear or when they completed a subset, they will receive stickers, prizes, for each session. Basically, they will receive stickers if it's a small accomplishment, but after it gets higher in risk, they will receive prizes for the achievement. For example, a stuffed animal. So in total, 5 dogs were used with each child, from a small calm dog, the small energetic dog, the mid-sized calm dog, large somewhat energetic dog, and a small but extremely hyperactive dog. So the sessions were conducted within the therapy room or outside in the courtyard near the clinic, and finally at the local dog park. So basically, you can see the Cindy's treatment population is about 4 months. You can see this, clinical conditions like this. Yes, Cindy ultimately has 13 sessions, starting from small dog and to the medium size dog. Basically, she starting from feeding the dog, and then the clinician will told Cindy to approaching the dog little by little when the dog barks, and finally approached by the dogs and finally the biggest part is and she's brave enough to approach the dog on her wheel in the last session. As for Sam, he has 10 sessions in 3 months. Start from clinic and then go to the dog park. So for Sam, the first one, you receive colored picture on dogs and watch dog through a window. The level of hierarchy always start from the furthest, which is further from the phobia, and slowly and gradually approaching the phobia itself, like closer and closer. And this level of the hierarchy, hierarchy of fear, they were designed for the patient to become less fearful. And you can see here the result from this graph. The result indicated that in 2 separate cases, children ages 4 and 5 years demonstrated meaningful clinical improvement over 10 to 13 sessions of exposure using RP and PM technique. You can see that after treatment, after 7 months follow-up, they become clinically significant. So the conclusion is, the purpose of the present case studies was to demonstrate the utility of behavioral treatments for sleep phobia in young children. Because they were so young, so CBT, cognitive behavioral treatment, do not really apply to them due to their cognitive level. And in both of these cases, watching parent and therapist model have positive interaction with the dogs. So in the end, they learn new experiences. And of course, because both RP and PM were friendly to administer in clinic setting. And basically, we all know young children, they respond positively even to a small responses. Like we know earlier, they receive prizes, stickers, praise, activities, and all that. They are all cost effective. So that's all for my first article. Thank you.
Okay. Next article is about behavior treatment of thunder and lightning phobias. Astrophobia is a thunder and lightning phobia whereby people with this phobia avoid a bad weather. Therefore, the purpose of present study was to explore different techniques in treatment of thunder and lightning phobia and assessment method in all 3 response systems of interest with phobic client, for example, verbal, cognitive, overt behavior, and physiological. For research method, the researcher designed a laboratory test and applied other tests immediately after each session in order to measure the client's fear of thunder and lightning phobia. First, behavior test. For client A to C, 6-minute tape recording of an actual thunderstorm was played with a cassette recorder and 2 loudspeakers was placed in each side of the screen. The room was darkened during the testing. A projector and a slide synchronizer of 20 slides of cloud that could develop into thunderstorm and lightning were projected on a screen in 2 meters in front of the client and in a synchronized pattern. The neon lamp was used to stimulate the lightning from a second cassette recorder, and the slide synchronizer was synchronized to the sound. For client D to F, 9.5 minutes of tape recording of thunderstorm was connected to the tape recorder. Number of steps was increased to 25 and 3 loudspeakers was used. The neon lamp is replaced with electronic flash. The dependent measures were obtained are the observation time and the client rating of the degree anxiety experienced during the test, and the rating was obtained immediately after the behavioral test. For self-report measure, client need to answer 2 questionnaires, which is fear survey schedule and thunder lightning phobia scale before, after and during the follow-up. For physiological measures, client D2F only, heart rate and respiration rate were continuously monitored during the behavioral test. For client A, the procedure that has been used is A-B design with 3 and 30 sessions in each phase. The treatment method is applied is self-administrated desensitization with 2 tape recorder, one playing the client favorite music and another one playing the 10-minute tape with sound of thunder. The favorite music was played continuously and client controlled the tape of the thunder. When she felt calm and ready to start, she turned on the sounds of thunder and gradually increased the volume as much as she could stand. When she felt a slight less discomfort, she was able to decrease the volume or turn off until she felt calm and then increase the volume again. When she managed to listen to the sound of the thunder at maximum level, her favorite music was lowered a bit and she started the thunder tape all over again. It was repeated several times until the 13th treatment session. She could listen to the whole thunder tape without any help from her favorite music or without any discomfort. So as a result, during the baseline, she stopped presentation of the thunder and lightning slideshow after 5 minutes and 20 seconds on average, which was concurrent with the maximum anxiety. Immediately after the first treatment session, she could watch the whole presentation, and it was the case during the remainder of this phase. Her rating of anxiety decreased consistently after the last treatment session and she experienced no anxiety. The mean for the phase was 5.4 and the result was same at 4-month follow-up occasion. So the self-report measure shows that client A increased the FSS score from 288 before to 343 after the treatment. The decrease at the follow-up was 274 points. The same trend was noticed on the thunder and lightning phobia scale, which is 61 before, 64 after, and 48 during the follow-up 4 months after the therapy. Client had experienced several thunderstorms without her former difficulties and physiological reactions. For client B, the procedure that had been done is A-B design with systematic desensitization. Relaxation training was complete in 3 sessions and a hierarchy of 11 items was desensitized in 8 sessions. So as a result, we can see that client B able to watch the whole presentation at first baseline testing and experience medium anxiety, which is 5.3. So during the treatment phase, anxiety rating fluctuated a bit but showed a tendency to decrease during the last third session, which is during the B phase, 4.8. During the follow-up, she experienced a minimal anxiety while watching the presentation. The self-report measure scores on FSS 1 to 2 did not change after the treatment, which is 183, but there was a small decrease at the follow-up, which is 170. The decrease of her scores in TLPS, which is 68 before, 44 after, and 45 at the follow-up. At the follow-up after the summer session, client B did not consider herself as completely recovered from the phobia, but greatly improved. For client C, the procedure is A-B design with baseline of 4 and B phase of 14 sessions. The treatment applied is covert reinforcement, which is behavior incompatible to phobic behavior, is covertly reinforced by letting the client imagine a positive scene depending on the approach behavior. So high frequency and high anxiety incompatible behavior were reinforced in a calm and concentrated way. Each sequence of thunderstorm was divided into a small steps, and each steps client need to covertly reinforce with imaging herself performing incompatible behavior while the thunderstorm came closer and finally vanished. As a result, we can see that client C could watch the entire presentation of the thunderstorm at first baseline testing and every time afterward. There was a tendency of anxiety rating decrease during the baseline, which is 6.0. This continued during the treatment phase, which is 1.4. During the last 10 sessions and at the follow-up after 4 months, she experienced minimal anxiety but was never completely free from discomfort while watching the presentation. Her score for self-report measure decreased a bit, which is 244 before, 196 after, and 167 at the follow-up. And it shows a decrease a lot in TLPS, which is 61 before, 30 after, and 22 during the follow-up. So at the follow-up, client C reported that she no longer had any fear of the thunderstorm. For client D, the procedure that had been done is after 3 sessions of baseline, the client phobia was treated with systematic desensitization, which required 10 sessions, 6 for relaxation training and 4 for desensitization proper. As a result, we can see that client could watch the whole presentation during the baseline phase but was anxious, which is 7, while doing so. So physiologically, it shows that the heart rate is 72.6 and compared to the testing value, which is 63. So her respiration rate was normal, which is 12.8. In the treatment of the anxiety rating, decreased continuously, which is 2.2, while the heart rate was decreased during the first half and increased at the last half of phase B. The average is 63.5, was significantly lower than the baseline value, so there was no change in the respiration rate during the treatment phase. Her result on self-report skills shows a large decrease on FSS, which is 207 before, 165 after, and 156 at the follow-up, and a rather small decrease on TPLS, which is 42 before, 40 after, and 34 at the follow-up. So both during the 3rd and 9th month follow-up, she could watch the entire thunderstorm presentation without any discomfort. Physiologically, she reacted at the baseline level and both of these events. So she reported that none of the pre-treatment problem behavior present during the thunderstorm. For client E, AB design was applied. After 4 sessions of baseline, received 5 sessions for relaxation training and self-administered desensitization with tape recorded for each session. The last method was similar to client A, but divided into 2 parts, which is first part, the relaxation and listening to the favorite music were used as activity incompatible to the anxiety aroused by the sound of the thunder. No assessment was made during this part of the phase C. And the second part is the tape prepared with 20 artificial lightning flashes followed by the sounds of thunder in intervals of 1 to 10 seconds. The arrangement of this pairs was randomized on the tape. So this part, no music was used, but the client could stop the tape of the recorder whenever she felt anxious and turn it on again when she felt calm. So during this part of phase C, assessment was made with behavioral tests. As a result, we can see that client E observed the entire presentation at all sessions. During the baseline phase, she was rather anxious, which is 8.0. While doing so, her heart rate was 75.6 and respiration rate was 17.5. The first treatment phase resulted in decrease of anxiety rating, which is 40, respiration rate 14.6, and heart rate 71.7. So during self-administered desensitization, there was a small decrease of anxiety, which is 3.0, and heart rate 69.7, and respiration rate unchanged. At the follow-up of 3 and 9th month after the end of the therapy, result of the test was whole unchanged. For the self-report questionnaire, there was a large decrease, which is 383 before, 293 after, and 256 during the follow-up, and a smaller decrease on TPLS, which is 64 before, 60 after, and 52 during the follow-up. At a 9-month follow-up, client E considered herself as completely recovered. For client F, the procedure that been used is AB design to treat the phobia with relaxation and stress inoculation training, SIT. The client is taught to apply different coping self-statement. First is education phase, second training phase, and third is application phase. As a result, we can see that client could watch the whole presentation at the first testing. She experienced a medium anxiety, which is 5.2 during the baseline, and her anxiety decreased in relaxation phase, which is 3.3, and 6 phase 1.8. Physiologically, she is fluctuated a bit during the baseline, which is heart rate 68.2 and respiration rate 14.5. During the relaxation phase, her heart rate dropped to 59, but increased in the baseline level during SIT phase, which is 68.6. Only a small changes in her respiration rate during this phase, and the mean was 14 and 15.5 respectively. So for self-report measure shows a smaller increase in FSS, which is 161 before, 175 after, and 181 at the follow-up, and a large decrease in TPLS, which is 67 before, 30 after, and 27 at the follow-up. At the 6-month follow-up, testing client rated of anxiety decreased to 1 while watching the presentation, and her heart rate was 75 and respiration rate was 17.5. As a conclusion, this research used 6 single case study and 4 different treatment techniques. At follow-up 4 to 9 months after the therapy, all clients except client B considered themselves as completely recovered. For self-report measures, there are small changes on FSS and the changes was larger on TPLS. The behavioral tests, in order to avoid the artifacts, high demands on client performance were presented in instruction. This led to a ceiling effect, and all clients except client A could watch the entire presentation for very first trial during the baseline. The physiological measures obtained for client D to F, heart rate showed a larger decrease, and at follow-up, heart rate had increased again to the pre-treatment level, but this should be regarded with caution that it based only on one testing, while the treatment values for 5 to 10 testing. The changes of respiration rate was generally smaller, and the pre-treatment value within the normal range was no extensive change could be expected. The study raises two important questions. First, concerning the assessment of phobia in single-case experimental, and second is concerning on the assessment phobia through the external validity.
So the next article is also about specific phobia, which is cynophobia, and the topic of the article is treating a dog phobia in a person with Down syndrome by use of systematic desensitization and modeling. So this article is about a research of a case study of 31 years old gentleman who has Down syndrome and also dog phobia. He also have a limited verbal skill, but he able to demonstrate a good level of understanding throughout the programs. So the introduction for this article is 1 in 9 adults has a mild phobia. It was said by Horton, and there is a high prevalence of phobias amongst people with learning disability, although little research exists in relation to this. Highly effective techniques have been developed to treat phobias. And in 1986, Dixon and Connery reported that there were no references relating to research on the treatment of dog phobias among people with a learning disabilities. Next is methodology. At first, the client was referred to the Trust Learning Disability Behavior Service Team (PSD) for treatment of his dog phobia. And the rationale of carrying this treatment is because the client's fear of dogs was causing major distraction to his quality of life, as it was preventing his involvement in community-based activities. The client is about to move into a community home, and after his move, the treatment will begin 6 months after the home move. The assessment was conducted by use of first a history research the client's phobic condition using medical or nursing notes. Second is directly observing the client, and third is interviewing staff in order to compile information of how the client behaves in the presence of fear stimuli. The aim was to identifying a hierarchy of fear, and this was achieved by identifying the levels of behavior displayed by the client as his fear became more intense and noting the proximity and conditions of fear stimuli. The client was unable to rate his own anxiety. In order to rate the levels of anxiety before and during the treatment, the author designed an individual's rating scale by using the hierarchy of fear produced during assessment. These observable behaviors were divided into 5 levels of anxiety rating scale, which is level 1, scans area and whole staff arms, level 2, complaints of ill health and start verbally apologizing. Level 3 refuses to take part in activity and remove self from area. Level 4 years up, pale complexion, pale complexion and appears confused. And level 5 run away from the situation, defecates and or urinates, uses abusive language and physically aggressive. The therapist attempted to grade the steps in order to reduce high levels of anxiety occurring during treatment. If during any treatment steps level 5 anxiety was exhibited by the client, the step would be adapted and repeated until the client gained control in order to minimize anxiety to the client. The study looks at the use of systematic desensitization developed by WOPI and was carried out using deep realization combined with graded exposure to imaging scenes which included the phobic object. And this was adapted by the people with learning disability, and took the form of behavior realization training combined with graded exposure. The author of this study decided to do individual therapy, recognizing the suggestion by Doherty and Houston in 1990 that group work can be detrimental to the needs of individual members. There was also a concern that the client would adopt the fear of others with several phobias. The treatment, using a variant of systematic desensitization, had the following features. So first is relaxation, second is graded exposure, third is modeling, fourth is staff training, fifth is treatment setting, and sixth is generalization. For relaxation, 10 weeks before treatment, the client commences regular relaxation sessions using behavioral relaxation training. And for graded exposure, using the hierarchy of fears produced during assessment, 40 treatment steps were written for the client's treatment plan. Each step aimed the client moving closer to the fear object. The steps were adapted as required. And for modeling, once in natural setting and during treatment session, all staff would model non-anxious behavior with dogs. During the treatment session, the member of staff holding the dog would be relaxed and model social interaction with the dog, such as stroking, petting, and giving instruction for the dog, and also praise when it complied. And the staff training, for staff training, all staff and the clients advocate attendant teaching session. This session gave information about phobias, including diagnosis and treatment available. For treatment setting, treatment began in a semi-controlled environment within the hospital with the aim of gradually moving out of the hospital setting as the program progressed. The reason for this was that the client's current level of fear was assessed as of danger to himself outside this setting. It was therefore important to teach the client a certain level of control before using setting outside the hospital. A number of people unfamiliar to the client were also used in order to reduce the client's dependency on others and enhance generalization. The last one is generalization. Outside the treatment session, staff continue to offer the client access to community facilities on a regular planned basis. Next is results. There were 36 recordings of anxiety. 17 were as a result of contact with an animal, which is 14 involved dogs and 3 involved cats. It was found that the client would show slight anxiety in 19 out of these 36 incidents, even when no animals were present. At the beginning of each treatment steps, the client showed no anxiety in 12 out of the 40 steps. In the remaining 28 steps, varying levels of anxiety were shown. They were as high as level 5 to as low as level 1. 16 of the steps showed initial anxieties to be high. By the end of all treatment steps, 34 showed no anxiety and 6 showed only slight anxiety at level 1. End of the treatment, the client had up to 9 community activities per week outside his treatment session. The client community presence increased by 86% in the second week of treatment and has been maintained at an increased level. On interviewing home staff, the clinical nurse specialist was informed that the client's willingness to visit unfamiliar community places has increased outside the treatment session. Some were identified as places he would not have visited previously for the first time since moving into the community home. The client joined his peer in garden for tea. He had declined previously due to neighborhood cats. A further development took place when he voluntarily left the car while at the local park. It was concluded that the treatment had achieved the aim of enabling the client to access the community facilities he enjoyed, some of which he had previously avoided. Next is discussion. The result of this study show that anxiety displayed at the beginning of each graded step reduced to zero or low levels of anxiety by the end of the step trial. At the end of the treatment, the client was able to confront dogs on a regular basis by distancing himself and using relaxation to control his anxiety. This was successful as a treatment for dog phobias in a person with Down syndrome.
Next topic is about skin picking. Skin picking is defined by repetitive pulling, scratching and going of one's skin that cause the tissue damage despite the absence of dermatological condition, which can cause the tissue damage, scars, ulceration and infection. It is associated with significant psychological distress and impact in social functioning. The first article is about the treatment of chronic skin picking in adolescents with Asperger syndrome and borderline intellectual disability. Several studies involving the person with and without disability show that skin picking related to gender, obsessive-compulsive, depression, and anxiety. Skin picking is elicited by the increase of arousal level and maintained by the arousal reduction. It serves a non-social function and maintained by the automatic reinforcement. Therefore, the purpose of the study was to extend the literature by evaluating the effectiveness of the treatment package that consisted of antecedent control and differential reinforcement on a severe and chronic skin picking in adolescents with Asperger syndrome and borderline intellectual ability using the novel intervention approach. The treatment consists of antecedent control, differential reinforcement, and fading of the intervention. For case history, Karen is a 17-year-old white female with Asperger syndrome and borderline intellectual disability. She suffers from skin pricking for 5 years. Karen referred by her case manager for treatment of her skin picking. There are several areas on her body that she most pick. She had previously instructed by the school counselor to make fist and squeeze, but it is not successful. So the correct reason for the failure is unclear. However, she did not receive reinforcement and systematic prompting for hand squeezing, which may precluded the treatment fidelity. For assessment part, there are two types of assessment that had been done. First is informal interview that is given to Karen and her mother regarding why the skin picking occurred. Second is questions about behavioral function, QABF, and it was administered to Karen's mother. So the result of the interview indicate that skin picking was maintained by non-social and physical function. The other potential function were not detected by the assessment. For course of treatment and assessment of progress, first Karen was assessed in baseline phase A to begin the pre-treatment levels of skin picking. This is include the number of sores on her body. During the first times Karen was referred, number of open sores was counted and recorded at the first baseline point. Karen was told to keep a journal regarding the skin picking and instructed to record the time and place which the skin picking occurred. During this baseline, no bandage was being worn. Karen intervention consists of antecedent control and differential reinforcement. Antecedent control consists of covering the body, which she often picked, and all the open sores with a large adhesive bandage. It was used to prevent the tactical simulation and the sets of irregular skin area because it is the potential antecedent to skin picking. For differential reinforcement, it consists of allowing Karen a special treat or dessert following meals depends on not removing of the bandage. If one or more bandage that were missing, the special dessert was not available. During the monthly treatment meeting, Karen and her mother will count all the open sores. To obtain measure of IOA as the number of open sores, the first author will count the number of sores visible when Karen was clothed and asked to point the sores on her body that hidden by the clothes. So the number then compared to the self-report that obtained by Karen and her mother. IOA was 100% across all sessions. The fidelity of implementation was assessed by Karen case manager during month 3, 4, 6, 7, and 8. The case manager checked on her twice monthly. During this visit, the case manager checked to see if the bandage were being worn, and during the intervention, 10 checks was made and 100% were recorded as correct implementation. Karen treatment used A-B-A-C experimental design with maintenance phase. A is a baseline, B bandage plus reinforcement, C bandage plus fading procedure, that is removal of reinforcement and number of bandage, and also the size of the bandage. The maintenance phase contains follow-up data for 4 months of the post-treatment. During the baseline phase, month 1, 38 open sores, month 2, 36 open sores. Following the implementation of intervention, number of open sores decreased to 11 at month 3 and 0 at month 4. After interventions was withdrawn, number of sores increased to 12 at month 5. When the intervention was reinstated, the number of sores decreased to 4 at month 6. So during the feeding procedure, the number of sores was decreased to 0 and it was maintained until month 12 when the data was terminated. So for follow-up session, when Karen returned in 4th month, she was happy that there are 0 remaining open sores. So she eager to continue the use of bandage. This was allowed and the intervention was withdrawn, which is 0 bandage was worn and no special design. When she returned at the beginning of month 5, the number of sores had increased and she agreed that intervention needed to be reinstated. At this time, bandages were placed only over the open sores that opposed to all potentially problematic area of the body. Total number of bandages that worn during this month is 12. When Karen returned at the 5th month, no sores had formed and total number of sores had decreased. Therefore, a plan to slowly fade the intervention was created. The first step in the fading process took place between month 6 and 7, that is consisted of no longer counting bandage at mealtime in order to provide the positive reinforcement. However, total number of bandage remained the same, which is 12. The second step in fading process occurred during 7 months and consisted of gradually reducing size but not the number of bandage that being worn. There are 4 types of smaller sizes bandage and each size was worn for 1 week. So during the 8th month, only the smaller blisters size of bandage were being worn over the last remaining places with skin irregularities. So at the beginning of the 9th month of the intervention, that was completely faded and no bandage were worn. At the beginning of 9th month, the intervention was completely faded and no bandage were worn. For treatment implication, intervention have been sufficiently powerful to cause a rapid decrease in number of open sores, which was then maintained 4 months after the treatment. There are 3 reasons considering the causes of the treatment. First, why the intervention was successful is not unknown. Hypothesis is that skin picking was maintained by automatic reinforcement in the form of tactical and or visual stimulation, which resulted from picking areas of skin with texture abnormalities. Thus, the intervention may have functioned to alter the putative antecedent by covering such areas with bandage. Second, it is not unknown if the reinforcement component was necessary or if the bandage alone would have been sufficient. Third, experimental design utilized only contained 1 return to baseline and would have been strengthened by the second reversal or the inclusion of additional participants. As a conclusion, there are some limitations and recommendations from the research. First, researcher did not undertake an experimental function analysis of the variable that controlled the Karen's skin picking. Second, it is possible that the behavior served other apparent functions for Karen, such as escape from non-preferred tasks or anxiety reduction. Third, it is possible that inadequate attention was given to other possible treatment options, such as those that would be relevant to escape maintenance behavior. For recommendation, first, this approach would work for other individuals and other types of behavior remain to be determined, but as a general approach, it would seem worth considering because it is easy to implement and suitable when direct contact with client is limited. Second, the intervention may be complementary to cognitive behavioral intervention that focus on teaching simple coping skills, which may be used to address the future unwanted behavior.
Now, let's talk about simplified habit reversal (SHR) and treatment fading for chronic skin picking in an adolescent with autism. Okay, for the kid's introduction. Mary was a 70-year-old female who had been diagnosed with autism. She attended a specialized school for children and youth who had autism and related developmental disabilities. The focus of her education program was on academic, social and soft skills. So basically, Mary had been picking her skin for many months, and this was her habit. Her disorder was reported by her parents and her classroom staff, because she did pick her skin at home and her mother, so it was a very big concern for them. And skin picking was primarily directed at her hands and arms and produced open sore, scab and blood, then causing tissue damage and creating unhygienic surroundings for staff and students. At one time, even her teacher had told her to finish the homework, but she cannot do that due to her skin picking disorder. Like her fingers was damaged with blood and scars. For the case conceptualization. So basically to obtain a history and to identify Mary's stimulus and activity preference. For example, we use functional analysis informal record for teachers, Khadi, and the questionnaire was distributed to her classroom teachers because they also notice their behavior. And for Mary, she would be given behavior interview and reinforcement survey. And also for the classroom staff, they were given functional assessment observation form. So based on pre-intervention assessment in FBA, we have noticed that Mary's skin picking was maintained by social escape and non-social automatic consequences. In this case study, we're going to talk about SHR, Simplified Habit Reversal, to have Mary perform a competing response that will stop her skin picking disorder. So, course of treatment and assessment of progress. We have 3 phases. The first one is baseline phase, which takes 18 days. The second one is intervention phase, which takes 50 days. And the last one is the fading phase, which takes 52 days. So, in general, for the baseline phase, if the staff teachers saw Mary pick her skin, the staff would say, Mary, keep writing on your math worksheet. Then if she managed to do that, she would get praise, and yeah, she would finish her activities. So that's it for the baseline phase. Mary need to be engaged in the outgoing activity when she pick the skin, basically to distract her attention doing that, to make her focus on her task. For the intervention phase, 50 days. So to implement SHR during intervention, Mary was given a small box containing several of Mary's preferred objects, which the box was placed on the corner of her work table. The objects were available to her throughout the school day. The box was remained on the table for a day. So the classroom staff referred to this object as fidget toys, and they informed Mary that she could earn tokens for keeping calm hands, means she would not pick her skin, remain calm, but either using A, the fidget toys independently, or when they prompted her, or B, not picking her skin. So during the intervention phase, you could say that the fidget toys do give an effect to Mary's behavior. The differential reinforcement procedure consisted of 2-tiered token economy that was designated by different colored tokens. So like, for example, we can see here. To receive a red token, Mary had to refrain from picking her skin and or use her fidget toys independently during 50-minute intervals throughout the school day. And she will also earn a blue token after each 50-minute interval if she contacted the fidget toys immediately after the staff instructed her to do so contingent on skin picking. And as soon as Mary had acquired 4 tokens, she could exchange them for additional computer time, like conversing with preferred staff or looking at the pictures of favorite cartoon characters. Since Mary liked pictured cartoon characters. So basically, this during intervention phase, if she managed to do that, this is so-called reinforcement. She will receive what she like. She will receive what she want. Instead of just punish and get angry at her, we use this kind of behavioral treatment instead. So, other than that, in the default baseline condition, staff fields containing the fidget toys and the token taken from a nearby closet. They also did not react to Mary when she picked her skin. When there was no differential responding between baseline and intervention condition during the first 2 days of this phase, staff subsequently started each half-day segment by reminding Mary about which condition would be in effect. So finally, during the fading phase, the staff implemented differential reinforcement without competing response by removing the fidget toys, reinforcing calm hands, and not reacting to Mary when she picked her skin. At the end of the phase, the interval for token improvement was also increased from 50 minutes to 30 minutes. So this graph is the episodic frequency of skin picking. You can see that 0 to 20 days, the frequency high and can low, and after this during the baseline. So this. Like so, for the explanation, during baseline, skin picking was variable, ranging from 0 to 22 episodes per day. The SHR, which is simplified habit reversal intervention, was associated with decreased skin picking within the range of 0 to 6 episodes per day. Initially, skin picking episode did not occur during the first 2 days of the reversal analysis, but then increased within both the modified baseline condition 0 to 6 episodes per day and the intervention condition of 0 to 5 episodes per day. We can see from the graph, low frequency skin picking episode continued when SHR was implemented again throughout the day, 0 to 5 episodes per day. Similar results were obtained during treatment fading with only differential reinforcement in effect 0 to 4 episodes per day, and when the interval for token reinforcement will increase from 50 minutes to 30 minutes. Basically, in conclusion, the result of treatment fading verified that Mary picked her skin infrequently many weeks after withdrawal of competing response training. And classroom staff also reported the same outcome several months later. Thus, it appears that the effects of intervention were durable over time. So, in summary, the result of the study suggests SHR can reduce skin picking in youth who have intellectual and developmental disability, such as Mary, who has autism, supporting previous research with repetitive habit disorders. Furthermore, these procedures seem aptly suited to natural settings such as on a classroom, since Mary is a youth. So the finding also indicate that initially time-intensive intervention plans for skin picking can be faded by systematically removing one or more procedures. You can see again from the graph that the SHR is good to cure a repetitive habit disorder. So that's all for me. Thank you.
So the last article about skin picking is functional assessment and behavioral treatment of skin picking in a teenage girl with Prader-Willi syndrome. Skin picking is common in individuals with Prader-Willi syndrome (PWS), but few treatment studies exist. PWS is a neurodevelopmental disorder due to absence of expression of maternally imprinted genes in the critical region. Individuals with PWS have mild to moderate intellectual disability. The main phenotypic features include neonatal hypotonia, and feeding problems. Behavior problems associated with PWS often include extreme temper tantrum, mood lability, obsessive compulsive eating, skin picking, the tendency to be argumentative, oppositional, and stubborn, and also the increased risk for psychotic symptoms. It was found that skin picking occurred in 85% of 590 individuals with PWS. Skin picking is considered part of the behavioral phenotype of PWS because it occurs significantly more in individuals with PWS than in individuals of the same chronological and mental age without PWS. Next part is case presentation. Carol is a 16 years old female who was diagnosed with PWS when she was 3 years old. She has mild to moderate intellectual disability, which is IQ 52, and she is often argumentative and stubborn when her schedule is changed without warning. She was diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder (ESD) during the course of the treatment because of the instance and sameness routine. Carol's mother referred her for treatment of skin picking. She had open wounds and scars primarily on her face, neck, and hands. She reported extreme distress concerning her appearance and a strong desire to stop skin picking. Skin picking first became a concern for Carol when she was 9 years old, and Carol's family reported skin picking had been a major source of stress and concern for the family over the past 7 years. To assess skin picking, an FBA was conducted, and FBA stands for Functional Behavioral Assessment. Next is course of treatment and assessment of progress. This study involved differential reinforcement implemented across all of Carol's environments such as home, school, and residential facility, and intervention session in which Carol met directly with the researcher, which took place in course about over 13 weeks. And it was implemented and involved two specific reinforcement strategies, which is differential reinforcement of alternative behavior (DRA) and also differential reinforcement of incompatible behavior (DRI). DRA is reinforcing of a more appropriate behavior than the problem behavior, such as to request lotion to put on her skin, and this provide an alternative to skin picking but did not necessarily prevent the skin picking when it occurred. For DRI is reinforcing of a more appropriate behavior that cannot physically occur at the same time as the problem behavior, such as to squeeze a small plush toy with both hands. One of these attentive behaviors were prompted by the caregiver. First, when Carol self-reported that she felt the urge to pick. Second, before Carol entered a situation in which the FBA had indicated skin picking was likely. And the third is when Carol was observed skin picking. Carol also met with the first and/or third author on a regular basis throughout the study, discussed specific instances of skin picking with Carol that had occurred since the previous meeting, and she was allowed to choose an additional tangible reinforce. During 6 of the 18 total intervention meeting between both the first and third author were present, and the session with both authors were used to collect inter-observer agreement between the authors concerning the condition of the wounds and if the tangible reinforcer should be earned. Both authors independently compared the pictures of the last session with the current condition of the wound. The authors were in agreement regarding the presence or absence of progress. This process also allowed for some assurance of treatment fidelity regarding the delivery of tangible reinforcers based on improvements in photo. In addition, after every treatment session with the researchers, an email was sent to all Carol's caregivers, updating them on the course of the treatment and any progress observed in the photo. This process may also have helped to ensure treatment fidelity across environments by potentially maintaining caregivers' willingness or motivation to implement the intervention procedures. This ongoing contact between the researchers and caregivers has been suggested to be an integral component of successful intervention. To assess results of the intervention, 30 of the photos taken across the course of treatment were randomly selected. These 30 photos were then shown in randomly order to 16 adults unfamiliar with the purpose of this study. These individuals were then asked to look closely at the wounds in the photos and classify them as either towards the beginning of successful treatment or towards the end of successful treatment. Complicating factors. Habit reversal has been shown to be effective. Involves the component awareness training, which participant was asked to keep a journal documenting the occurrence and effects of the skin picking. This journal can then be used to identify patterns of occurrence and to increase the participant awareness of the damage skin picking caused. However, due to intellectual disability, Carol did not know how to write, and this specific approach to awareness training was not possible. Complication arose during the 13 weeks of intervention that necessitated small adaptation to the intervention while it was in progress. Carol began to express a disinterest in the squeeze toy. It is a complication not uncommon in treatment and education of individuals with developmental disability. To address this loss of interest of squeezing toys, the squeeze ball was replaced with a puzzle book after 6 weeks of intervention and was then used throughout the remainder of the study. The puzzle book was chosen as the replacement. Carol often denied having picked her skin or wounds being present, which led to disadvantageous discussion. As a replacement, and in order for Carol to self-evaluate her face, photo of the skin picking wounds from previous weeks and photo from the current session were shown to her. Carol seems anxious and stressed immediately prior to the following meetings with the researchers because she was concerned that her wounds may not have healed enough to earn the additional tangible reinforcer. To address this issue, meetings were scheduled twice instead of once a week. In addition, a laser tangible reinforcer, which is small stickers, was given to Carol in addition to praise her, regardless of whether she had healed sufficiently to warrant the larger self-chosen reinforcer. At the end of the treatment, Carol was diagnosed with ASD. In Carol especially, the restricted pattern of behavior was apparent. The diagnosis of ASD did not change the treatment because it was already individualized to her characteristic and she responded well to this. Last but not least, treatment implication of the case. This study contributes to the literature because it is one of only two that involve the successful treatment of skin picking in an individual with PWS. This study adds to the sparse intervention literature involving the treatment of skin picking based on FPA results. However, caution should be used when interpreting the results of this study for three reasons. The first reason is the precise mechanism of action responsible for the observed improvement cannot be certain. Second, it is not known if both the treatment meetings with the researcher as well as the differential reinforcement components were necessary, or if either one of these components alone would have been sufficient to achieve the same outcomes. Finally, the design utilized was an EB design, whereby a baseline was followed by an intervention phase and must be considered pre-experimental. So basically, that's all from us. Thank you.